reliability, and this has to do with scales or indices, okay? So some of you are using the depression scale. Some of you are using the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. Some of you are using one of the Bogardus social distance scales at the very end, right? How close do I want people who are different than me? And we have 3 different categories there. But in addition, some of you might be making your own scales. Hey, Marco. So, for example, the set of health questions, health 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the poly questions, the political ones, or the econ questions on the economy, or the cheat questions on cheating behaviors and thoughts. So, and there are the social ones, social 1, 2, 3, 4. So some of you may say, hey, I think those might go together in a scale. I want all the social ones, that's 4 of them. Well, if you're using each individual social item, there are 4 of them, you need to run 4 tests. So if you collapse them into one item called social activities, you have to give it a name that makes sense to you. Then that's just one thing you need to do, right? So instead of taking your time seeing if age has an effect on social 1, and age has an effect on social 2, and age has an effect on social 3, and age has an effect on social 4, that's a bit tedious, right? So if you collapse them all and call them social activities, then you can see if age has an effect on social activities, or if sex has an effect, or gender in our case on social activities, or marital status, or income, or whatever. And you get at some more interesting stuff. So some of you have already identified what scales you're using, some of you have not. The main thing to keep in mind is you cannot combine things into one scale that are on different scales to begin with. So you can't take one of the socials and one of the Bogardus social distance and one of the depressions and then weight and combine those. They're measuring different things. So when you make a scale, they have to be separate and distinct aspects of the same construct. Remember in your research questions, very broad, you have 2 constructs, right? You might have the economy as one of your constructs. And you have to identify, how are you measuring the economy? Well, maybe I'm measuring it with, have you been laid off? Are you currently employed? How much money do you make? What's your occupation? Those are all ways I'm measuring that construct, the economy. I'm not combining those to make one item, but how this construct I'm measuring it using these separate and distinct items. So it's sort of like that, in that you have a construct that we call depression, and we've got 17 things that are separate and distinct aspects of depression, right? So how often do you feel it takes great effort for you to do simple things is 1/17 of what we call depression. Each one of these 17 items individually is not depression, but the 17 combined is depression. And this is the depression inventory that you will see time and time again. Okay? So let's get started. So reliability and validity. Reliability, the definition, the easy definition is if we measure it today, we measure it again tomorrow, we measure it again the next day, measure it again the next day, we're getting the same answer. So for example, I have a scale. This little carpet tile right here is my scale. I step on the scale today and it says, you weigh 100 pounds. I step off and I go merrily about my business. I step on the scale again tomorrow and it says, you weigh 100 pounds. Step off the scale and I go merrily about my business. Is this a reliable measure? Absolutely. Absolutely reliable, because every day I step on it, it says I weigh 100 pounds. Okay. We have what we call internal consistency reliability, where several of these items are logically related to each other. This is what we have in the Rosenberg self-esteem, the DSM depression inventory, and the Bogardus social distance scales. They've been used time and time and time again in hundreds of different research studies. Okay? We know that the items, right, the 4 social distance items, the 10 Rosenberg self-esteem items, the 17 depression items, we know they're related. They have a logical relationship to each other. And the way we ascertain that is we run a correlation and we see that, okay, they vary together. As the first variable goes up, the the second one is likely to also go up, but the third one goes down. The fourth one goes up, the fifth one goes down. The sixth one goes down, the seventh one goes up, or however they go. Maybe they all go up. If this one goes up, they're all going to go up. Or if this one goes down, they're all going to go down, right? Doesn't matter what it is, as long as they vary in some pattern across people. So people who tend to say, have higher scores on this number one, also tend to have either higher or lower scores on number two. And those people also tend to have either higher or lower scores on number three. And as we go through, we find that. Okay, so that's what we do. Marital happiness is another example. Then we have validity. So am I measuring what I intended to measure? Let's go back to my scale. Am I measuring a true and accurate portrayal of my weight with this scale that says I weigh 100 pounds? Now most of you can take a look at me and say, nah, I shouldn't weigh 100 pounds. Right? Which weighs a little bit more than 100 pounds. Okay? So it's not a valid measure of my weight. Religious or religiosity and spirituality are a good example of this idea of validity. So we used to ask people all the time in research over the years, how religious are you? And people would answer it. And then at some point in time, people started crossing out the word religious and writing in the word spiritual and answering it. Now, first of all, if someone changes the wording of your question and then answers it, that's a missing. Right? Because they've changed your intent. Okay? They're not getting at what you intend to get at. Okay? So validity means, is it valid? Do all the people who are taking your survey or sitting in your interview or whatever, do they all understand the question in the same way? Does it all have the same meaning to them? And for a lot of people, religiosity and spirituality are very, very different. So researchers have started distinguishing between the two. Then we have content validity, and we want to make sure we cover all parts of whatever it is we're looking at. So when you use 3 depression items and say it's depression, you do not have content validity. You're not covering all possible meanings of the construct. HIV risky behavior is my construct. It's measured by asking people in my survey, have you ever used IV drugs, yes or no? Have you ever had sex with a bisexual or homosexual man, yes or no? Have you ever given money or drugs for sex, yes or no? Have you ever taken money or drugs for sex, yes or no? Now, for a person who answers no to all of these, what's that person's score? 0. For a person who says yes to all of these, what's that person's score? 4. Okay? So this one ranges from 0 to 4. Probably a lot of people have 1s or 2s or 3s, right? Some people have 0, some people have 4. Some people have 4s. Okay? What level of measurement are these original variables? Just these. They're nominal, and are they special? They're dichotomous. So that makes it really good for us because we can run more tests with dichotomous variables than we can with these categorical, like married, separated, divorced, widowed. Right? Okay, so dichotomous makes it special. We only have 2 special things. Dichotomous or Likert exception. It's better than the English language. There are only 2 specials. Right? Now, once I've combined it and it ranges from 0 to 4, now what level of measurement is it? Ratio, why? And that 0 implies the absence of whatever we're measuring, right? And we're measuring HIV risky behavior, and if you said no to all of these, you're not engaging in risky behavior, HIV risky behavior, so you have the absence of that, so that's why it's ratio. Indices and scales allow us to measure several dimensions with a single value. If you haven't already gotten that, that gives you that concrete. And they're composite measures, and you can only create them from variables that are dichotomous or continuous. So I can use ordinal, interval, or ratio level variables, but I can also use dichotomous level variables. So what are dichotomous level variables? Now, what kind of variable is the only kind of variable I cannot create a scale with?
Nominal level that aren't dichotomous?
Exactly. So something that has 3 or more categories. So, gender on our survey, marital status, okay? So anything that's nominal level and is not dichotomous, you cannot do this with. And that's really important because the computer doesn't know that you're putting garbage in, right? You have to know what you're putting in. Okay? Garbage in, garbage out, but you have to be able to know that you're putting garbage in. So an index is what we do when you take an exam for most classes, right? I'm asking for your knowledge of U.S. history from 1860 to 1750, right? That's my construct that I'm measuring, and I'm going to give you this 100-point multiple choice test. And I'm going to ask you individual questions that are getting at those individual little dimensions of U.S. history from this year to that year. And all 100 together are measuring that construct, your knowledge of U.S. history from this year to that year. I just literally take each right answer, and that's a point, and I add up all those points, and that's your score at the very end. Okay? So you're very familiar with that, right? We do the same thing with IQ. We give you a bunch of little tasks, and we add up your score, and we give you an IQ. Do it with a lot of different things. So that's technically called an index. Scales are a little bit different. Scales measure intensity, but we tend to use those words interchangeably. In fact, the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale is actually an index, but look, it has scale right in the title. Okay, so to create an index or scale, you're going to select all the items that seem to fit. Now remember, you have this lot, they logically fit together. So in your brain, these have to go together. You have to be able to say to yourself, these 5 things are different aspects of this broader construct, and I'm going to call this broader construct X. And the name you give it, X, has to make sense. Okay? It can't be some craziness. It has to make sense. Okay? So they have to be related. Again, the answer to one item is correlated with the answers to your other items. So we run the bivariate correlation on all the items. Now remember, a correlation is bivariate. It's just looking at this variable and that variable together. But you put in all the variables that you want. So you're looking for them to be correlated at about a 0.4 or greater. Now sometimes what you'll find is, well, this one's correlated at a 0.6 with these 3, but only at a 0.2 with this one. But this one's correlated at a 0.4 with that one, and this one's right. So sometimes you're not going to get all of those 0.4s on all of the correlations. It's still okay to go to the next step, because the next step is the most important one. But if you run this bivariate correlation and none of them are correlated at a 0.4, you don't have any 0.4s, they're all lower, move on, right? So then you go to the second step where you run this test called the Cronbach's alpha. And the Cronbach's alpha is like a giant correlation, but it's looking at it in a multivariate way. It's looking at, as this one goes up, what tends to happen to this one, this one, this one, and this one. And it gives you sort of like a grand correlation. It's called the alpha. And the alpha needs to be 0.7 or greater. And it's just like a correlation in that the highest score you're ever going to get is a 0.999. Right? Because 0.1, 0.0 is a perfect correlation. You're never going to get that. Well, here's a correlation, right? We look for the ones, we draw a line, we scratch out one half. It doesn't matter which half since they're a mirror image. And we see that unemployed and looking for work a month or more is correlated with being demoted or moved to a worse position. It's correlated at a 0.9. Unemployed and looking for work is correlated at a 0.9 with cut in pay or reduced hours, and unemployed looking for work is being passed over, okay? And then being demoted and cut in pay, being passed over, and then cut in pay and passed over, okay? So they're all correlated pretty high, right? They're all 0.9s. So we run that first, and then we go ahead and we run the Cronbach's alpha, and we get this little box first. It's called reliability statistics. And it tells you the Cronbach's alpha and the number of items. So I put 9 items in, I ran it, and I got an alpha of 0.908. It's higher than a 0.7, so I'm rocking. I'm good. Then this is the rest of the printout. So the printout is this followed by this. This is the rest of the printout. And we only care about this last column. That's the only column we care about. It lists all 9 of my items. and then it gives me the Cronbach's alpha if item deleted. So what it's saying is that if I delete this item, my Cronbach's alpha, 0.908, will go up to 0.990. But instead, if I delete this item, my Cronbach's alpha of 908 will go down to 905. Okay? So you're always trying to make it higher. You certainly don't want to go down to 729, right? Why would I own business losing money or failing? Right? Why would I want to get rid of that and have it go down? The only way you want it to go is up. Okay? Now it can go up, but 908 to 0.990, do I want to lose that item to make it go up that amount? It's going up less than 0.9, going at 0.088, so it's not going up a whole lot. But if I look back at these and I say, yeah, I think that doesn't seem to cover the same thing that all of these cover, then I would want to get rid of that, rerun it, and when I rerun it, this will say 0.990 and this will say 8. If you take a look on your next page, which is 60, it's Cronbach's alpha reliability analysis 11 items. So this is what the full printout looks like. Get this little case processing summary. We don't care about that. We only care about two things. The Cronbach's alpha, which is what in this particular one on page 60? 0.942. How many items are there? 11. And if I counted them all up, I'd see 11. So you displayed affection, you were angry, that's been recoded. You calmly discussed something, you had conflict, that's been recoded. So we've got these 11 items. 942 is what it's at. That's certainly quite respectable, right? 0.9 is a very strong alpha. Can I make it higher? As I look at the column that says Cronbach's alpha if item deleted, can I make it any higher than that? Which one would I have to delete to do that? You sarcastic. You. That's like Y-O-U, right? You sarcastic. You were sarcastic to each other. This is the marital satisfaction stuff. You were sarcastic to each other. And what will it increase it to? 0.948. So, to go from 942 to 948, how much am I increasing? 0.006. Not a lot. But I want to take a look at these. Okay, so does that you being sarcastic to each other, does that fit? Well, it's part of the accepted Gilford-Bingson marital satisfaction scale, so I would definitely keep it. But if you were creating your own scale, not using an established scale, you would look and you would go, well, maybe sarcastic doesn't fit. Or, yes, it does, I'm keeping it. I don't need to go up anymore. As long as you're at a 0.7, you're good, right? Now, if you have something that jumps you from a 0.7 to a 0.9, take a really good hard look at that. Because the computer's saying, this doesn't go together so well as the others, right? So if you turn to the next page, I've actually rerun it so that you can see, and you see use sarcastic is missing from below, and up above on the reliability statistics box, it says 0.948, and it says now I only have 10 items.